All right. From crash computer stuff to a whole bunch of BS. See it. Maybe the 30 FPS works. I've been working on this computer for fucking all night. So, I kind of want some kind of credit.
And we're going to put those scorecards up, and we'll highlight it for you if you haven't seen them. But what does Moretti do, Ken, in the late rounds? 5 of the last 6 rounds he gives to Haney. How do you explain that? See, that's where the problem is. How do you explain that, Mr. Moretti? Well, I put up a tweet. This is what got us to where I am. I put up a tweet saying, somebody just told me that Moretti, Dave Moretti, the judge, tonight, gave the 10th round to Haney. If that's true, I had not verified it yet. But I put up a tweet with my great tweet team. Really, I mean, I just love it. And I put it up, and within minutes, it went crazy. In 12 hours, it got 1 million views. 1 million views. That was whatever else I put up there. But I think in like 6 hours, it got 500,000. And my son immediately, my son who's been a scout in the NFL for 14 years, he was born into the cauldron of boxing. He understands the underbelly of boxing more than most people would. He immediately texts me, Dad, looking at the response, these people are fed up. They are what you said last week. They're mad as hell. They don't want to take it no more. Dad, you gotta start a petition for a national commission and end this once and for all. And I said, oh my God, my son's right. At first, I was a little hesitant.
Why are we at
Do
70?
we want to really get into this? No, I can't talk anymore. I can't complain no more. None of you can if we don't do this now. Because now this is time to do more than just talk, more than just scream. It's time.
Let's see.
And this is one tangible way to make change. So we're putting up a petition. We have lawyers like Keith Sullivan, who's a lawyer for my foundation, pro bono work. He's a lawyer for many people in the boxing industry, fighters, causes. He's just a tremendous human being, tremendous lawyer. As I said, he works pro bono for my foundation for years. He cares about people. When he works pro bono for my foundation, what does that mean? That means he's helping people that can't help themselves. For nothing except knowing that he can do it. My daughter, the same thing. My daughter, a lawyer. I'm blessed. My son, they're gonna be all part of it. Maybe my friend Pedro, if he wants to. I haven't talked to him directly about it yet. But and our team, you, Rob, our new man Chris, who we welcome to the team now. That's there working with Rob. Everybody, Brennan, Ian, all our guys. But you, the fans, you have to. I mean, it's there. It's there for you now. We're going to get it up. It's going to be all the things I know nothing about. Digital. Ooh, all right. But our people do know about it. Keith Sullivan already had his parish, his secretaries all morning working, putting it together so we can get it up on our social media.
Damn, only 90.
As soon as possible.
Man, 30 FPS.
But we want to make sure it's right before it goes up. So it'll be up. Hopefully it'll be up today. Hopefully it'll be up tomorrow if not. But it'll be up very soon. But more important than that, you have to be up for the fight, up for this opportunity again to actually make it different, to make it. You don't like things in the world, you go and vote. Well, this is your chance to vote. This is your chance to vote. And I put some flashpoints that I appreciate the ones because when my son saw the reaction and read the comments, the comments, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I mean, like I said, 500,000 views in hours. And my son read some of them to me. And they were like, Teddy,
Yeah.
put the petition up, I'll sign it. Put the petition up, I'll sign it. So you know what? We're going to put it up. We're going to put it up. But more than just follow me because I'm asking you to follow me.
Mm.
I want to go through flashpoints, factual points of why we need a national commission. I mean, look, you really don't need me to read this. If you've been watching boxing for any length of time, you know. You know already. You know what that old saying, when a duck walks like
Yeah,
a
my
duck
last
and
hour,
quacks-
Joe.
when
Last
someone
hour.
walks like a duck and quacks like a, it's usually a duck.
I've been trying to figure shit out
I mean, you know.
last
You
2
know
days.
already. But I want to do it professional. Here it is. This is my mission statement to you, our boss, Rip, our audience. We work for you. We work for ourselves to put out things that we believe in for our families. But ultimately, we answer to you. If you don't believe in what we're saying, there's no reason to say it. So here it is. Need to eliminate these local commissions like Nevada. That's where we're going to stop. A lot of these firestorms have been in Nevada lately. They're not though, but they're a big. We need to eliminate these local commissions like Nevada run by these bureaucrats who are beholden to the very people making money. Now, I want you to understand this now. The essence of what we're talking about. Beholden to the very people making money in the sport. Here's the simple facts. We're going to use Nevada as the example since this is where the latest firestorms emanated from. Okay, the commission in Nevada. Their existence is based on 100% on money they make off of promotion. Boxing. It's a business. No problem. Nevada Athletic Commission charges 8% of the gate. 6% goes to the state. 2% of that is used to sustain the local operations of the Nevada Athletic Commission.
Oh,
In other
snap.
words, salaries, operating expenses, etc. It is so lucrative that they make a profit. Good for them. The Nevada Athletic Commission is completely self-sufficient financially from the state, but 100%
Using my favorite.
reliant on promoters' money. Bang! If there's no shows, no promotions, no promoters, there's no salary, no job. We're starting a petition to create an American National Commission to be presented to several federal elected officials to get a law passed creating a national commission. We already have calls in. Just so you know, we ain't close. We already have calls in to conference people, to people that have seats in Congress. The Nevada Athletic Commission operating budget appears to be based on their public financials as 1.2 million, all from promoters' money, not taxpayers. I want to be very clear. They have a reserve, which means they are making money much like a Wall Street business, all from the promoters. So let me now just tie a bow on. In light of all this, do you think that this possibly could explain certain things? That the promoter who wants and needs a certain fighter to win and who has influence, obviously, on who or are the judges and referees for that event could be at least in a position to influence the outcome of a fight. Well, let me make an analogy. If, say, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks of the NBA, the NBA is happening right now. I'm sorry, Ken, for yourself. The owner of the Dallas, the owner of the, I had to get, I'm sorry. I had to loosen things.
First the Bruins, now the Celtics.
Well, I don't mind. We'll take care of you later. Right now, we're playing the first game of boxing.
I'm with you.
We'll take care of you later. Okay, we will. I promise.
Okay,
Get
let's
up.
see what we got.
Let's say that most people, one of the Dallas Mavericks, that the NBA were paying, writing the checks. That's what we're talking about here. To pay the officials to officiate the basketball game with his team. Would you be a little bit concerned? I always have to laugh. Possibly lead to something not good. Maybe you would. It's got a look of impropriety, probably would lead to. It's not a certain amount of taste or influence with the department. Actually, something very similar to that actually happened in 2008, 2009. You're all probably familiar with this notorious name, Jeffrey Epstein, the same Jeffrey Epstein who a couple years ago now or less, supposedly hung himself in a jail cell under very suspicious circumstances. In 2008, 2009, he paid $128,000 to the Palm Beach Sheriff, who, while incarcerated on prostitution charges, and he received preferential treatment while he was in jail, allowing him to leave the county jail. By the way, you're not supposed to be allowed to do that. That's usually a pretty simple concept.
Must have been a work release.
Not too complicated. He was allowed to leave the county jail 6 days a week to work from his offices. So there it is.
Oh
In a
shit!
nutshell.
Caught me.
So you have a chance now to actually do something to save the sport. Rather than just complain and threaten, as I said, to leave the sport until the next time it happens, so you can sign this petition. I'm betting on you.
Here we go. First
There's
place. I'll
enough
take
good
it.
people out there that, as we say, are just as bad as hell. You don't want to take it. Let's go.
I'll
Let's
take
go.
it.
Let's make it.
My first time ever first place ever.
Let's make the donut.
All right,
It's time to make
let's
the donut.
let's jump in and talk about the fight. Like you already said, super competitive fight. I thought the early rounds were super close. I thought Loma started to pull ahead late in the fight, certainly in the 10th and 11th. And I have to say I was supremely impressed with Haney's ability to bounce back.
Oh
in the
my
12th round
goodness.
after the battering he got, especially in the 10th rounds. So credit to Haney. I thought that he had a great fight plan. It looked good, but I think if you take a look at that fight as a whole, I thought Loma outboxed him, but it doesn't matter what I think. Everyone's here to hear what you think. How'd you like it and what'd you think?
Well, we already touched on it. Here it is. I thought that there was a marked difference in age. Where normally he stands on the outside, you know,
Ooh,
he controls range,
that's gotta hurt my pride.
combinations together. Not the hardest punches.
Yeah, I figured. I figured.
Sharpshooting combination. He uses his height and reach really well.
I figured.
He,
Oh, he got it. I'm first.
you know, he's a
There we
big
go.
boxer. And there was a distinct difference in his approach here. And I think it started with the shove. The shove that everyone talks about, that I didn't like it. I didn't think it was called for, but I think I understood it. Maybe better than some, because
There we go. There we go.
This was his moment. This was his day of reckoning, okay? Fighting a Hall of Fame, a future Hall of Fame fighter, iconic type fighter, 2-time gold medalist, 400 amateur fights, only one talking about Roman champion, 3 division champion, won the world title in the sports title.
That's right.
So he knew, Haney knew, this was the moment. that he would be judged. No matter what he's done before.
Ooh, got me.
Not, he won't be
Got me.
The Ken Boasters, 2 fights, winning the title, then defending it in Australia. This is the one. And his shoving, as much as I thought it was wrong,
I'm impressed in first place.
was his way of getting.
He's if he's right there, dang, can't hit on him.
For this call to arms, for him and his father, where he was basically saying, I'm going to draw a line in the sand, and it can't be. And I'm going to make a stand. Maybe a stand I never made before.
Damn.
Stand,
You would think I would
put a flag
cut up to him. Oh, he's right there then. He's right there.
that Mr. Haney is here. That I'm here, I'm fighting this special fighter, and I am going to, at the end of the night, show you my work. Answer the critics. Maybe answer his own doubts. Or his own little echoes.
There we go, thank you.
Sometimes we get inside our own chamber.
What?
Internally. But
What?
he's definitely
What?
going to be different in this fight. And he knew or felt that he had to be. And he
What?
was. He went out there with his knees bent. He grabbed the floor. He wasn't out there on a pot shot and sharpshooting. He was moving forward. He was a drone. He was a shark going through the waters.
All right.
Looking for. He was throwing bad intention punches. Like Tyson used to talk about. He was throwing punches to do damage to the body and to the head. Meaningful, impactful punches that we don't always associate with hate. He wasn't always controlling his range quite as good because he was more concentrating on just
Well, fuck a bitch.
and as I said, planting his flag up in his mind, the beginning of the reign, a special reign in his mind at only 24 years old. A special beginning, even though he's been here, of hate and what we can expect moving forward. And he was going to do it this night. And he did throw the more meaningful punch. He did go beautifully to the body. And he still maintained enough of a range difference where he could still have the edge with his longer arms and his physical assets and attributes that he should have an edge with. And Lomachenko, he's always known to start slow. He started a little faster. But I think the most significant thing was the first round sort of told you what to expect the rest of the night. Close round. And you were going to get a lot of it. Close round. But I'm not saying who I favored, but I'm going to say I liked it more for Loma. And I'll tell you why. He was able to get close. And to win this fight, he knew that he had to get close. And he was able to do that early. Not like he did with Teofimo, where it came very late. He was able to do it very early. Get close. And I don't think that Haney can. Because Haney said, I'm bigger, which he was. I'm stronger, which he was. I'm more physical, which he was. And I'm gonna win a physical fight. Maybe I even looking for a physical fight. And so you had a lot of close rounds. And you had Haney with this attitude, with this force, this physical force that I just described. This different Haney with his knees bent, grabbing the floor, going, looking on the search. You had him ahead early on. Close rounds, but some rounds where he just got credit for pushing the envelope, for navigating the inside of the ring, navigating the ring a little bit, ring generalship, whatever you want to call it. He had a little edge. but they were close. Close. He didn't have a huge, but he had an edge. And then the late round started coming. And Lomachenko, if he was going to win, he was going to use one of his advantages, experience. And experience was going to show up late. And he needed it to show up. I even tweeted at one point that Lomachenko needs to get busy. It's close, but I think Haney's got a lead. He needs to get busy. And you know what? He started getting busy. I also had predicted before this fight that I favored Haney, but I said sometimes, as my great mental coach used to tell me, these former champions that have been in great fights and showed greatness in that way, that sometimes they can pull it together. They can call on the boxing gods and pull it together for one night. Kind of like Samson, I said, when Delilah gave him a haircut and he was chained to those pillars, those concrete pillars, and he looked up into the heavens and he asked for power. One more time. And he pulled the columns down. He got the power one more time. Loma, there's no doubt, was impacted by Father. But there's no doubt that he brought back as good a performance as he could at this point in his life. That he did search out to that gods in the heavens and say, give me it one more time. And I'm not saying he was the Lomo 5 years ago. And I said that before the fight. The reason I'm picking Haney is because I think this fight is 4 or 5 years too late for Lomo. And I think that if you're going to be honest with yourself, taking nothing away from Haney, nothing. I want to be very clear of that and his effort. But if you're going to be honest, Loma of 4 years ago probably would have separated himself a little more in this fight than he was able to do here. But again, you can only fight the fight when the fight is fought. And that's when the fight was fought. A couple days ago. And they both put it all out there. All out there. And I will say this too. I had questions about Haney. As I have questions about a lot of the top undefeated fighters that haven't quite been tested yet. You see their talent. You see their outside talent, their abilities. You see all that. But you haven't gotten a peek yet at what's inside. At what's inside. The talent inside. The resolve. The mental toughness. The dog, if you will, that they like to say. Right? That ability to go where other men don't readily go. To search it out. To open up new doors in your house. New frontiers like Captain Kirk in Star Wars. Whatever that was. Star Trek. Where you're going to new places. Places you've never been. But you're going there. And you're finding the light. When there appears to be darkness. That's what we wanted to know. Could he go there? And we got an answer. He was getting tested. He hadn't been tested in that way. Yes, he got shaken by Linares. But Linares is not that level that we're talking about with Loma. He got shaken and he showed heart in that fight with Linares. Hey, he did. We know he's got heart. Loma got dropped by Linares and Loma stopped him with one arm that particular night because he got surgery right after for, I believe, his right shoulder, his right leg. But we want our fighters, the people that before we want them tested. The same way as we wanted the great Sugar Ray Leonard tested, as he was tested against Roberto Duran in that first fight. To see if he's more than flair, more than neon talent, more than just something that he was lucky enough to get the right genetics, and he worked hard to develop them. But that he had something beyond that. That he has character. That he has the impact. And Haney was being tested in that 10th and 11th. And I'll tell you, I'm not alone. a lot of people were wondering, was he starting to crack? Would he crack? The question was a proper question. It was right there playing out. And then what happened? He comes back in the 12th round. He behaves, as I said, he behaves like a champion. We already knew he knew how to fight like that, but we didn't know. Could he behave like a champion when he's asked to behave like a champion? I mean, come to behave like a champion, and he did the 12th round. He won the 12th round. I think there's certain key factors and X factors in this fight. One, obviously, the judge Moretti. Two, the 11th round, after dominant 10th round for Loma, coming back. And he needed to come back. I think he was behind, but he was coming back. And if the fight was close, that I thought it was, and as close as we thought the judges had it, at ringside, everywhere else, if it was, then it felt like Loma was starting to take control. Loma was starting to be the boss. That the tide was shifting a little bit. And here it is, after the 10th round, he puts another dominant round. The left. Now it looks like Loma's grabbing the fight. But here's the, for me, nobody talked about this. Because we're all responsible for it. So, yeah, Moretti's responsible for what he did. But Loma's responsible. We all are for our choices, what we could have done. I'm not trying to in any way to criticize or
All right.
make it justify what happened with that one judge. And to have it 116, 112, that's unacceptable. Like I said earlier, 115, 113, either way, maybe even closer, maybe a draw. But 116, 114, no. It's not acceptable. And then the 10th round, the biggest round of the fight for one guy, and it turned out to be Polo. He gives to the other guy, not acceptable. And then to give, when Loma's coming
Let's
on,
go.
to give 5 of the last 6 rounds to Haney, not acceptable. That's why we're starting to, that's what it's going to prompt us to do this national commission. But, of course, it's an accumulation of everything that's been going on in this sport. But you have to take responsibility when you're in there for what you do and what you can do. I thought Loma, and again, for the Loma fans out there, I don't care, but I'm just telling you, I love him too. But I have to seek out the truth and say what I see. In the 11th round, where it looked like he could
Mother love of
a
life.
little bit of a plan on the fight after that big 10th round. He let up. He let up the last 40 seconds, last minute, whatever it was. I didn't have a clock, but he let up. He let off the gas, and I thought to myself, he's going to be sorry for this, mate. And I thought he had all the momentum, and maybe he gave up the
That's
momentum.
not my fault. That was my
I was
fault.
saying to myself, wow, I don't know. But maybe it's because he knows better than me. He's the one in his 35-year-old body. Maybe at 35 and all the accomplishments of his life, the journey of his life, 400 amateur fights, 2 gold medals, winning the title in his 3rd fight, even though he's only got 20-something pro fights.
I'll take it.
Top fights. Top
That's
guys.
my
He only
fault.
fought top guys. Only fought top guys. Maybe after all that, at 35 years of age, in that 11th round, where Teddy Atlas expected him to just keep pushing the pedal to the metal, maybe he knew he could. Maybe he knew he could. The bottom line is.
Oh my gosh.
And then, I think he lost the promo.
Touche.
Because the 12th
Fuck
round,
this car.
where I really said to myself, if he's gonna put his stamp on this fight and wrap this fight and put his hands around the throat of this
Touche.
fight, he's gonna have to do what he did the last 2 rounds, win the last round, and he didn't. He lost some of the momentum from the 11th, whatever.
God
But-
damn it.
he didn't get it back, but he didn't win the 12th. Haney won the 12th.
All three judges
And-
had it for Haney.
And I did too. So, well, you know, Moretti was going to have it for Haney, so that don't mean crap.
He gave him the 10th.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. He gave it to him before the 10th.
Yeah, of course.
That's the problem. And I'm kidding, but I don't even know if I'm kidding. But getting back to the fight, when it was over,
Yeah, good race. Can't hate. Can't hate.
I'm going to tell you how I felt. I felt like that he should have won the 12th. He shouldn't have let up in the end of the 11th. And I was wondering, is that going to hurt him? It can't help him. It's a tight fight. You can't help it. But I will say clearly that the way the fight was fielded, I didn't score it. I wasn't writing scores down. But the way it felt, the rhythm of the fight, the flow of the fight, what I just finished describing to you, where Loma had been stuck in control late, I felt that I was going to hear the judge, the ring announcer say,
Too much
I
sliding.
just felt that it was moving in that direction. But I also felt that some of that movement was stopped, stymied, slow by that 12th round. But I still, I even tweeted it out there. It's out there for everyone to see. I think my feeling is, I'm not saying I'm going to go crazy if it doesn't happen, but my feeling was you're going to hear and move. And I didn't hear. We heard what we heard.
Well, when the 12th round was starting, you know what the
But
live betting on
unfortunately,
was?
what we heard, here's the thing, Ken. Unfortunately, what we heard also afterwards was 116, 112 for Moretti, and the 10th round, which was just unforgivable, given to Haney. See, that's when this whole thing gets put sideways, upside down. And as far as the analysis of the fight, I kept tweeting that our fight plan got a lot of views, 100,000. In the fight plan that you did so well with. I talked about when Haney keeps his lead hand, his left hand low, which he does. When he keeps it low, that Lomachenko will have an opportunity to close the gap behind the double jab and then finish with the left.
I could. I don't like
And he
that card.
did
Hard for
all
me to
that
use.
He had that opportunity. He took advantage of it. You know, I shouldn't say all night, but in a lot of times where when the left hand was low of Haney,
Close to using?
Loma
Adjust
closed
it?
the gap
Oh,
behind the
shit.
jabs and landed the left hand. And he was able to do it. And you know why he was able to do it? Both men had fast hands, good hands. Both. But where Loma had the edge was his feet are faster. He still got quick feet. He still got great feet. Those
Okay.
dance lessons when he was a kid that his father made him take, they're still paying off. And I knew that if those feet were still fast, and they are, he could close the gap quick. And that's what he did. And then I tweeted, and we were right with the fight plan. Exactly what we thought might happen in those spots. And then and to the credit of Haney, the right hand usually works against the southpaw, Loma's a southpaw. Haney did counter him coming in with the right hand a couple times. He did. But Loma showed a great chin, a great resolve. And as I said, Haney, I'll make it clear again, showed that resolve late. He built himself to be worthy of being called a champion. Whether you think he got it or not, he behaved worthy of being called that word, champion. But I thought that Loma, I tweeted that when it started getting late, you got to get busier. And what he's got to do is push Haney back. Because Haney has a habit of, when he goes straight back, when he goes out, he goes straight back. And
Oh, shit on the
being
host.
that his mindset, his whole mode of fighting, his whole attitude, Haney, was to go forward. Well, if you make him go back, it's going to screw him up a little bit. It's going to kind of be that fly in the ointment. Since See, normally it wouldn't be because he's looking to fight on the outside. He'll take a step back. He'll lay traps. But when he's committed to just going forward, Ken, as Haney was, he had all his eggs in that basket. If you back him up, it could be a problem for him. Mentally, because he's not being the boss anymore, because he's obviously looking to go forward more than ever before for a reason.
We'll see. I'll do a little head to head,
Dominate you.
one on
Take your
one.
heart, take your soul. As I said, to put his imprint on this fight, to draw that line in the sand, in the camp. And then if you go and you force him out of that and go back, then you've defeated him a little bit. You've chipped into that a little bit. And I tweeted that that's what Loma needs to do. To force him back, and when he goes straight back, take advantage of being tall. Now there's a tall target to catch. He's in the line of fire. Go with him to catch him. And guess what? Loma started doing it. And he started catching him, forcing him back, catching him.
Still won't even
back.
get 8. I'm not even trying to.
But there was no consistency on either one offensively. Like Haney was pushing the envelope really good early on throughout the fight, early on, and he's pushing the envelope. And
We definitely
and
going
what's
back there.
Loma doing? Loma is scoring with combinations. He's got the edge with the Haney had the edge with power and harder punches, more meaningful punches.
Down to who won.
Loma
Fuck.
had the advantage with combinations. And so you got spots with his combination. Spots, sporadic, but nice spots. Then you got spots with the power, where the pushing backwards is shown, the body punching, you know, the more damaging punches. The side end. You got both, but you got both sporadically, not consistent. That's what made it so close. There was no consistency either side with that. There were times where Loma went on a run and he stopped. There were times where it looked like Haney was scoring and then it stopped. At the end of the day, as I said, it just felt like it was gonna go Loma's. It just felt like it was set up to go this.
I don't know what just
People out
happened.
there, if they want to be part of the belief that he got robbed, right? And he did get robbed by Moretti. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. No argument. But they would say, well, they gave it the powers that be. They want to continue making money because that's how they pay the bills out there. We just laid that out for you. The commission out there pays their bills by events out there in boxing. That's how they pay their bills. That's how they make their money.
I hate
Right,
this
Ken?
fucking
That's how they do it. We just laid that out.
I hate this
So they gotta
setup.
keep
I
doing
hate
it. So
it.
they gotta
No,
make
I
sure
hate
the
it. I
promoter
hate it. I
keeps
hate it.
running shows that it's not out of business, and they got to make sure that the guy that makes the most money continues to win. And if they look at it from a business standpoint,
Yeah, I see something.
and
Come on, what the fuck? That helped me understand.
The first setting we'll be taking a look at is FXAA. FXAA is one of the two anti-aliasing options that we get in this game. The anti-aliasing options help smooth out jagged edges around different objects in the game. So that could either be our own character that we're running around with, or it could be the leaves on the different trees out in the distance. I have tested this setting both in 4K, 1440p and 1080p because the recommendation will differentiate depending on the resolution you're playing in. Normally, FXAA is the lowest amount of anti-aliasing you can enable, which is also showcased through the negligible performance and quality difference that you get from having it either turned off or on. No matter what resolution we're playing in, I don't really notice any difference. Therefore, I would just recommend to turn this off and instead use MSAA, which we're going to take a look at next.
MSA costs so much fucking VRAM.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my video. Today we are once again taking a look at GTA 5. We'll take a look at all the different settings, how they compare in terms of FPS and fidelity, and let's go my own
For you one of the last videos I watched with y'all.
If you have any suggestions for future games you would like for me to analyze, feel free to write them in the comments below. Firstly, I wanted to showcase the two extremes of all low and all ultra, to see both the performance and the quality difference between the two. There's a few points I want to mention before we move on to the next setting. Firstly, GTA 5 is very dependent on your CPU, and especially on single core performance, since it is an older DirectX 11 title. Therefore, you might experience a CPU bottleneck while playing, especially in multiplayer. So that is something you should be aware of.
I definitely feel
Secondly,
that.
the game generally does not use that much RAM, which is really great. However, if you turn up the settings, you will be able to use a lot of VRAM, which is also something you should be aware of.
Yep.
As you can see in the video, we have a 74% difference between all low and all ultra, so we have a lot of performance headroom we can work with. So let's get started. The next setting we'll be taking a look at is MSAA. MSAA is another anti-aliasing option you can use inside this game. Like with FXAA, MSAA will smooth out jagged edges in the game and generally make the image look a lot sharper. Like with FXAA, I have tested this both in 4K, 1440p and 1080p. Unlike FXAA, MSAA has a massive performance difference between having it turned off and all the way up to 8x, where we lose around 50% of our performance. However, MSAA does also actually make a difference in terms of quality, where you can see a noticeable difference. Maybe not so much in the 4K, but when we later take a look at 1080p, you'll definitely be able to see a difference. For 4K, I would recommend to use 2x, because we do have a little bit of shimmering around Michael's head and body, which will go away if you enable 2x instead of having it turned on. If we then take a look at 1440p, I would actually recommend using 2x again, because at off we do have some shimmering, which seems to mostly be turned off by enabling 2x MSAA. We could also go up to 4x, but that's gonna be up to yourself. I recommend to at least use 2x. And if we lastly take a look at 1080p, you can see that we have a lot of shimmering around Michael when we had this turned on. Here I would actually recommend going all the way up to 4x to completely remove all this shimmering and make the image look a lot better. That will also take around 30% of your performance, which is quite a lot, but then again it will also make the game look a lot better and make it a lot more playable. It is also worth mentioning that MSAA will also change your VRAM usage. It actually has a profound effect on your VRAM usage, especially between 4x and 8x. As you can see, up to 4x we use around 14-15% extra VRAM, which is not too bad, but as soon as we turn it up to 8x we use around 30-32% extra VRAM. Now let's take a look at NVIDIA TXAA. NVIDIA TXAA is the last anti-aliasing option we have in this game. It is exclusive to NVIDIA graphics cards, so if you do not have an NVIDIA graphics card, you can just skip this section. In my testing, I have again chosen to test both in 4K, 1440p and 1080p, and for my testing methodology, I have chosen to test it against 8x MSAA, because to enable NVIDIA TXAA, You need to have MSAA enabled as well, at least on 2x. But you cannot enable NVIDIA TXAA
There's no
if
sweet
you
spot
have
for 60
MSAA
FPS.
on
That's
8x.
hilarious.
That is a lot of abbreviations. I hope that makes sense. As you can see in my testing, I gained quite a lot of performance because I actually gained the performance difference that I saw earlier between 8x MSA and 4x MSA, which basically means that NVIDIA TXAA does not hurt your performance at all. So whether you have it enabled or not will have no impact on your performance. Therefore, I highly recommend to use this setting if you can, and I would highly recommend to use it in conjunction with the
Oh, come
recommendation I
on.
gave in the previous section around MSAA. So if I recommended for you to use 2x MSAA, I would recommend to also enable TXAA, and the same for 4x. Moving away from all the anti-aliasing settings, we got population density. Population density determines how many NPCs are in the game, basically. So how many people do you see walking down the sidewalk? How many are driving around in cars inside the city and outside the city? All in all, this setting makes the game feel a lot more alive and makes it feel like you're actually driving in a big city. This has a very small impact on your performance with maximum of 3%. Therefore, I would highly recommend to set this to 100 because otherwise the city can feel a bit empty and less realistic. Now let's take a look at population variety. Population variety determines the variety in the different NPCs in the game. So the variety in the different kinds of clothes they'll be wearing, in the different kind of NPCs you'll be able to see, and so on. I haven't been able to fully confirm whether or not this will also affect the variety in the different cars you see NPCs driving around, so I'm not quite sure on that. In my testing, I didn't find any performance difference between having this at the lowest at 0% or at the highest at 100%. Therefore, since it doesn't hurt your performance or even your VRAM usage, I will recommend to just keep this at 100%. Next up, we got distance scaling. Distance scaling determines the amount of detail that could be rendered at one time. So distance scaling won't affect whether or not you're able to see a building, but it can affect the level of detail that building will be in once you see it. In my testing, however, I did not notice any difference with any objects, buildings, and so on out in the distance, whether I had it at 0% or had it at 100%. We do, however, lose a small amount of performance, around 3 to maybe 4% performance. Therefore, I would recommend to just leave this at 0% since I didn't notice any difference in terms of quality. Next up, we got texture quality. Texture quality determines the quality of certain objects in the game. In my example, you can see the picture hanging on the wall is a lot sharper and generally better looking at very high, comparatively to either high or normal. This setting has no impact on your performance in game, however it does have an impact on your VRAM usage. So between normal and very high, you'll use around 20% extra VRAM. Therefore, I would recommend that you set this setting based on the amount of VRAM you have available. So if you have enough VRAM available, then I would highly recommend to use very high because it is, without a doubt, the best looking option. Now let's take a look at shader quality. Shader quality will primarily affect the lighting or the quality of the lighting inside the game. The biggest and the best example of this is either at a sunset or a sunrise. So you can see here there's a massive difference, especially between normal and high in terms of the quality. However, this is only at certain times of the day where you might actually see that difference. So most of the time you're playing, that won't make that much of a difference. In my second example here, I have also seen it make certain shadows seem a bit darker, but that is very difficult to showcase in a video. Lastly, it also seems to have a slight effect on parallax mapping, which means that it will have a slight effect on the realism of certain dirt roads. Where you can see we get a bit more detail once we turn up this setting. It's not much, but you can definitely see that there is a difference. Shader quality, therefore, does not make the biggest changes in the game. Therefore, for this setting, I would recommend to just set this at normal, because you're not really gonna notice the difference when you're just playing the game. Next up, we got shadow quality. Shadow quality determines the quality of all the different shadows inside the game. You can see that there is quite a big difference between having this on normal and having it on high. While we have it on high, we can actually make out the individual leaves on the plum tree. Between high and very high, we do also have some slightly extra details added to the shadows, but it's not as big a change as going from normal to high. The peculiar thing is that between normal and high, we don't actually lose any performance, even though the shadows definitely look a lot better. However, between high and very high, or between normal and very high, we lose a lot of performance. And I also noticed that I started to use some extra VRAM once I turned it up to very high, which I did not notice with high. Therefore, I would recommend to leave this at high, since it adds some extra quality without hurting your performance. Now let's take a look at reflection quality. Reflection quality will control the quality of all the different reflections inside the game. So this can be the reflections coming from different store windows inside the game, or from your shiny new car. This has a big impact on the quality of GTA, because you have so many store windows inside the cities, and you have so many shiny cars that will reflect all the different objects around them. In my testing, however, even though you can see that there is a quite big quality difference between the different settings, and it does slowly get better and better looking, it's not until we hit also that we actually lose any performance from turning this up, which is actually quite good, because that means that I can safely recommend to leave this at very high, because it doesn't hurt your performance. Next up, we got Reflection MSAA. Reflection MSAA is another anti-aliasing setting inside this game. However, this one will only affect the reflections inside the game. In theory, this works like any other anti-aliasing setting, where it will remove the jagged edges as you go higher up in the option, and generally make the game look a lot better. In my testing, however, where I tried to test this in both in 4K, 1440p and 1080p, I could not find any noticeable difference between having this turned on or having it turned all the way up to 8x. Therefore, I would recommend to simply leave this off. Now let's take a look at water quality. Water quality actually does not affect the quality of the water that much, in the sense of the amount of waves or the way the water actually looks. It more so affects the screen space reflection on top of the water. So as you can see here in my example, the pier out in the distance becomes a lot more detailed when it's reflected into the water, the higher we go into this option. It seems like high and very high are more or less the same, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of quality. It is also worth mentioning that this will also have an effect when it's been raining. So if you're driving around the city where after it's been raining, you'll see there's water puddles everywhere. And those water puddles will also be affected by this setting, depending on the amount of detail that will be in those screen space reflections on the water puddle. For my recommendation, I would recommend that you use either high or very high if you're playing single player, because this can really make the game look absolutely stunning when it's raining. However, if you are playing multiplayer, I would rather recommend that you use normal, so you can gain those extra 10% of performance. Next up, we got particles quality. Particles quality controls the quality of different particles inside the game. So that can be the quality of the rain, the snow, the fog, the different smoke effects in the game, either from you burning the tires, from a fire, from you shooting your gun. All of those are affected.
Jesus Louise.
In my first example here, I've tried to compare the quality of the rain between normal and very high. However, in my testing, I really didn't see any noticeable difference, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of the quality. In my second example, I tried to burn out my tires to create some smoke to be able to see any difference. Even though we here do find a minor performance difference, I still can't see any noticeable quality difference between the three different options. Therefore, I would recommend to just leave this as normal. Now let's take a look at grass quality. Grass quality controls both the density and the quality of the grass inside the game. Between normal and also, we have an almost 25% performance difference, which is quite large. Which is also why you will experience a massive frame drop once you go outside the city, where there's a lot of grass and foliage. For this setting, I would recommend to use high, because normal basically turns off all the grass, making the game look very bland and very ugly. And between high and ultra, there's not that much of a difference in terms of quality, even though there is quite a large difference in terms of performance. Now let's take a look at soft shadows. Soft shadows will soften up the shadows inside the game to make them look less harsh. Between sharp, soft, and softer, there's not that much of a difference, both in terms of performance but also in terms of quality. It's not until we actually hit softest that we actually start seeing the shadows becoming more softer. If we then compare that to the AMD and NVIDIA specific one, you can here see that the NVIDIA one is definitely the one that is the best looking in terms of its softening of the shadows. However, it is also the one of the two that has the biggest performance hit. It's hard to comment on the AMD one because this was tested on an NVIDIA graphics card, so it might look better on an AMD card and it might perform better. No matter what you choose, either softest, the AMD specific one or the NVIDIA specific one, this will have a fairly large impact on your performance. And some people might even prefer to have their shadows seem very sharp. Therefore, for my recommendation, I would actually recommend to just leave this at sharp, because if you don't mind having the shadows a little bit sharper, it will save you a lot of performance. Next up, we got PostFX. PostFX, or as it's more commonly known in other games, post-processing, affects several items inside the game. Firstly, it will generally just affect the bloom of the game, so the lighting and the guardrails inside this game, which is most noticeable either when it's very foggy or when you have a sunrise or a sunset. Secondly, it will affect the auto settings, so that will be motion blur, depth of field, and HDR. I don't have an HDR cable monitor, so I can't test that, but the way it affects motion blur, first of all, is that you need to have PostFX on a minimum of high, otherwise you won't be able to use motion blur.
Suck
The
it,
same
sniper.
goes with depth of field, where you need to have PostFX actually on very high to be able to use depth of field. Therefore, this is very important to keep in mind if you want to use either motion blur or depth of field. In my first example here, it's very difficult, and was also very difficult for myself, to find any noticeable quality difference, even though we can see that clearly is something happening in the background with our performance difference. If we then go over to my second example, again with a sunrise or sunset, sorry, you can see that there's a clear difference in quality between the four different. Therefore, I would recommend to use high for PostFX, because with high, you still have some bloom, you still have some guardrails enabled, and it will still make the sunset, sunrise, and other foggy parts of the world look a lot better, without hurting your performance too much, where you're looking at maybe 2 to maximum of 5% at those very specific scenarios. Now let's take a look at motion blur strength. Motion blur strength determines the strength of the motion blur in-game. And the motion blur in-game will add some extra blurriness to the screen while you're moving your camera around. This is most noticeable while you're aiming down your sight. You can see here in my example that it can make a dramatic difference in the way the rest of the world looks while you're aiming down your sight. If I try to freeze a frame here, you can more easily see the difference between the three different options I have chosen. In my testing, I surprisingly did not find any noticeable performance difference. Therefore, this is more of a personal preference, whether you like to use motion blur or not. Personally, I don't like it, so I would recommend to just leave this at 0%. Next up, we got depth of field. Depth of field will slightly blur out everything else except the very thing you're either looking at or aiming at. As you can see here in my example, in both of I'll have it off and on. I'm aiming directly at the gate in front of me. But if you notice the rooftop on the house a little bit further back, while we have it enabled, they start to be very blurry, and also the trees further out in the distance compared to while I have it off, where I can still see them very clearly. In my testing, I found next to no performance difference between having this turned off and having it turned on. However, I do have to mention again that you need to have PostFX on very high to even be able to use depth of field. So it does kinda inversely come with a performance cost because of that. Therefore, this is more of a personal preference, whether you like it or not. Personally, I don't really like it that much in GTA, so I would just recommend to leave this off. Also, because that means that we can leave PostFX at high instead of very high. Next up, we got anisotropic filtering. Anisotropic filtering will add some extra sharpness to textures that are either viewed at a distance or at an angle. In GTA, this is very noticeable with the different roads in and outside the city. So while you're driving around, you'll definitely be able to see a difference depending on the option you have chosen inside this city. As you can see with my example here, as we go higher into the option all the way up to 16x, the bricks in front of me start to get more and more detailed, and we lose all the blurriness that they have while we have it on the lower options. This has a very small impact on your performance, and since this is something you're gonna notice and you're gonna experience every time you drive around the city, I would highly recommend to leave this at 16x. Now let's take a look at ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion adds some extra shadows into crevices inside the game. Normally this is most noticeable with the trees, with the different branches and leaves of trees, where you'll be able to see that they get some extra shadows and some extra depth to them. However, in GTA I couldn't actually find any place generally in the game where I could see any noticeable difference between having ambient occlusion off and having it all the way up to high. Therefore, together with the 3 to 4% performance difference, I would recommend to simply just leave this on. Next up, let's take a look at tessellation. Tessellation adds some extra geometrical details to the trees inside the game. As you can see here in my first example, or it might be a bit difficult to see, once we go from off to normal, the tree gets a little bit extra curvy. It's not much, it's a very minor difference, but it is definitely there. Between normal and very high, there really isn't any noticeable difference, and the performance more or less speaks the same, where we have the same performance across all the options. If we then take a look at a maybe better example at the palm trees that's actually located inside the main city, you can see there's a clear difference between having this on off or having it on normal. However, again, after we hit normal, there doesn't seem to be any reason to go any higher. Therefore, I would recommend to just leave tessellation at normal. Now let's take a look at the first advanced graphic, which is long shadows. Long shadows is supposed to add some extra shadows from either buildings or mountains that are further out in the distance, but should be especially noticeable either at dusk or at dawn. From my testing, however, I have not been able to find a single location where I could see any noticeable difference in quality between having this off and having this on. Therefore, I would simply recommend to leave this off because it's not going to make any noticeable graphical difference. Next up, we got high resolution shadows. High resolution shadows does exactly what the name tells you. It will use some higher resolution for the shadows in game, making them look a bit sharper. In my testing, I found this has a very minimal difference on your quality of the game. It's something you actually have to look for to actually see the difference between having this off and having it on. Therefore, I would also just recommend to leave this off because I highly doubt that you're going to notice any difference, which is actually quite good because that means that I can safely recommend to leave this at very high because it doesn't hurt your performance. Next up, we got Reflection MSAA. Reflection MSAA is another anti-aliasing setting inside this game. However, this one will only affect the reflections inside the game. In theory, this works like any other anti-aliasing setting, where it will remove the jagged edges as you go higher up in the options, and generally make the game look a lot better. In my testing, however, where I tried to test this both in 4K, 1440p, and 1080p, I could not find any noticeable difference between having this turned off or having it turned all the way up to 8x. Therefore, I would recommend to simply leave this off. Now let's take a look at water quality. Water quality actually does not affect the quality of the water that much in the sense of the amount of waves or the way the water actually looks. It more so affects the screen space reflection on top of the water. So as you can see here in my example, the pier out in the distance becomes a lot more detailed when it's reflected into the water, the higher we go into this option. It seems like no high and very high are more or less the same, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of quality. It is also worth mentioning that this will also have an effect when it's been raining. So if you're driving around the city where after it's been raining, you'll see there's water puddles everywhere. And those water puddles will also be affected by this setting, depending on the amount of detail there will be. Next up, we got texture quality. Texture quality determines the quality of certain objects in the game. In my example, you can see the picture hanging on the wall is a lot sharper and generally better looking at very high,
Okay.
to either high or normal. Shooting your gun, all of those are all affected by particles quality. In my first example here, I've tried to compare the quality of the rain between normal and very high. However, in my testing, I really didn't see any noticeable difference both in terms of performance, but also in terms of the quality. In my second example, I tried to burn out my tires to create some smoke to be able to see any difference. Even though we here do find a minor performance difference, I still can't see any noticeable quality difference between the three different options. Therefore, I would recommend to just leave this at none. Now let's take a look at grass quality. Grass quality controls both the density and the quality of the grass inside the game. Between normal and ultra, we have an almost 25% performance difference, which is quite large, which is also why you will experience massive frame drops once you go outside the city, where there's a lot of grass and foliage. For this setting, I would recommend to use high, because normal basically turns off all the grass, making the game look very bland and very ugly. And between high and ultra, there's not that much of a difference in terms of quality, even though there is quite a large difference in terms of performance. Now let's take a look at soft shadows. Soft shadows will soften up the shadows inside the game to make them look less harsh. Between sharp, soft, and softer, there's not that much of a difference, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of quality. It's not until we actually hit softest that we then see that the AMD more perfect this game, so the lighting and the guardrails inside this game, which is most noticeable either when it's very foggy or when you have a sunrise or a sunset. Secondly, it will affect the other settings, so that will be motion blur, depth of field, and HDR. I don't have an HDR cable monitor, so I can't test that, but the way it affects motion blur, first of all, is that you need to have post effect on a minimum of high, otherwise you won't be able to use motion blur. And the same goes with depth of field, where you need to have post effects actually on very high to be able to use depth of field. Therefore, this is very important to keep in mind if you want to use either motion blur or depth of field. In my first example here, it's very difficult and was also very difficult for myself to find any noticeable quality difference, even though we can see that clearly is something happening in the background with our performance difference. If we then go over to my second example, again with a sunrise or sunset, sorry, you can see that there's a clear difference in quality between the four different options. Therefore, I would recommend to use high for post effects, because with high, you still have some bloom, you still have some guardrails enabled, and it will still make the sunset, sunrise, and other foggy parts of the world look a lot better, without hurting your performance too much, where you're looking at maybe 2 to maximum of 5% at those very specific scenarios. Now let's take a look at motion blur strength. Motion blur strength determines the strength of the motion blur in-game. And the motion blur in-game will add some extra blurriness. Right? Depth of field will slightly blur out everything else except the very thing you're either looking at or aiming at. Turned on. However, I do have to mention again that you need to have post effects on very high to even be able to use depth of field. So it does kinda inadvertently come with a performance cost because of that. Therefore, this is more of a personal preference, whether you like it or not. Personally, I don't really, because that means anisotropic filter. See with my example here, as we go higher into the option all the way up to 16x, it would. Now let's take a look at ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion adds some extra shadows into crevices inside the game. Normally this is most noticeable with the trees, with the different branches and leaves of trees, where we're able to see that they get some extra shadows and some extra depth to them. However, in GTA I couldn't actually find any place generally in the game where I could see any noticeable difference between having ambient occlusion off and having it all the way up to high. Therefore, together with the 3 to 4% performance difference, I would recommend to simply just leave this off. Next up, let's take a look at tessellation. Tessellation adds some extra geometrical details to the trees inside the game. As you can see here in my first example, or it might be a bit difficult to see, once we go from off to normal, the tree gets a little bit extra curvy. It's not much, it's a very minor difference, but it is definitely there. Between normal and very high, there really isn't any noticeable difference, and the performance more or less speaks the same, where we have the same performance across all the options. If we then take a look at a maybe better example at the palm trees that's actually located inside the main city, you can see there's clear difference between having this on off or having it on normal. However, again, after we hit normal, there doesn't seem to be any reason to go any higher. Therefore, I would recommend to just leave tessellation at normal. Now let's take a look at the first advanced graphic, which is long shadows. Long shadows is supposed to add some extra shadows from either buildings or mountains that are further out in the distance, which should be especially noticeable. Tells you if you're gonna make any resolution shadows. High resolution shadows does exactly what the name tells you. It's 14.4% of your VRAM usage. Now let's take a look at high detail streaming while flying. High detail streaming while flying should in theory add some extra details while you're flying in the game. So this will only affect your game while you are flying. In my testing both this time and the last time I made a video on GTA, I have not been able to find any noticeable graphical difference having this either enabled or disabled. And all the other sources I've looked at tells more or less the same story. Therefore, I would simply recommend to leave this off. Next up, we got extended distance scaling. Extended distance scaling will extend the distance at which textures are loaded in. So you can see here in my example, while we have this at 0%, the building is not loaded in more than you can just see that there is a building. As we go higher, we add more and more details to the building, making it look a lot better. This will also have an impact while you're flying, where this will be able to remove a lot of the pop-ins you will experience. Not all of them, but it will definitely help a lot to minimize the amount of pop-ins you'll experience while flying in the game. Last time I tested this, I did test it while flying, where I found an up to 6% performance difference between 0% and 100%. And even at that 6% performance difference, I will still say that it's worth going for the 100%, because this can make a big difference in the quality while you're playing this game, both in terms of while just running around the city where you'll be able to see some extra details, but especially while you're driving really fast or flying around, where you'll be able to remove a lot of those annoying pop-ins. And now we have the final setting, extended shadow distance. Extended shadow distance will add some extra detail. You'll be able to set it to recommended and change. Highly recommend making your illusions are made throughout the video. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, you have to select your anti-aliasing settings based on the resolution. So if you're playing in 1080p, I recommend a minimum of 4x MSAA. If you're playing in 1440p, I recommend a minimum of 2x MSAA. And if you're playing in 4K, I also recommend 2x MSAA. Furthermore, you should throughout 10 because it will add some extra details to the shadows without making you lose any more. Here are my own recommended settings, which are based off the recommendations I made throughout the video. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, you have to select your anti-aliasing settings based off the resolution. So if you're playing in 1080p, I recommend a minimum of 4x MSAA. If you're playing in 1440p, I recommend a minimum of 2x MSAA. And if you're playing in 4K, I also recommend 2x MSAA. Furthermore, you should also select the texture quality based on the amount of VRAM you have, since this setting will have a big impact on your VRAM usage. And here is the live showcase of my recommended settings stacked up against all low and all ultra. As you can see, we have almost the same quality as all ultra, while having almost 70% more FPS. We're also using 55% less VRAM compared to our ultra, which is just great. But thank you all for watching. If you made this far and been able to use this video to get better FPS in GTA 5, please like and subscribe for future videos where we'll take a look at other games. If you have any feedback on the videos or any other tips or tricks to get more FPS in GTA 5, please.
Ken, you're a businessman. You look at it as a business. Who are you going to give it to? A 35-year-old guy who already
All
got a
right.
couple losses.
Last two testing were different tonight.
Great.
Yeah, I'll say a 2-part stream. I'm gonna do one at 90. And we'll see how it works, and then we'll do one at
You know, to be part of that promotion. You
and
know,
then we'll do
part of-
one at
part of
60 and see how it works.
presenting yourself in that sort of way, right?
I'd argue that it's less a lack of interest in playing that role versus Haney's.
No, but here's
You know what I
where-
mean? Like,
but
it-
that's not. But that's not what I'm concentrating on. What I'm saying is, I think that if you look at it as a business, and we do look at it as a business, you had to pick one guy that you're gonna. Both guys are with the same promoter. They're both with Aaron. If you look, I mean, Haney came over from her. He had to because he couldn't get the title fight against Kambosos unless he did. So Hearn released him. The contract was over. Whatever. Hearn did the right thing. He let him go over.
All right, let's see. Phone test. Let's see.
Title, make money. Maybe
I think this
eventually
was the
he'll
last
back to
fight,
Hearn.
by the way. I think this was
Yeah,
his
that's
last
what I mean.
fight.
When it runs out, I don't know. But
Mm.
when that runs out, maybe it'll go back to her. But he, on that night, Aaron had both guys. And I would think that Aaron probably has an extension on it. I would think. I would think that it's more than just the last fight. I don't know. We can figure that out.
The reports I read said he's a free agent now, but yeah, you're right.
All right. Say he's a free agent. Good. Again, the people that are in Vegas that make money from fights want the guy that can do the most money to win. Is that pretty fair?
No, that's exactly right. The young 24-year-old undefeated, handsome American kid. That's
24-year-old, handsome American kid, undefeated. Again, you have a 35-year-old, his days are numbered. I'm not saying he can't still compete at a good level. I'm not saying that. He's a special guy, himself. But his days are limited. There's no limit to where Haney can go. No limit. And there's a lot of big fights out there. A lot of big fights with a lot of money with that. Money. And so the prospect, the future of Haney for these guys that only care about money, like in The Godfather, where Hyman Roth says to Michael, it's business, it's not personal. It's always business. And they're saying, we've got a 24-year-old kid, I think it's 24, we've got a 24-year-old kid, undefeated, good-looking kid, that big fights in front of him. We can make big matches. And we got a 35-year-old guy who we don't know how much time he's got left. Let me think about this thing. Oh, I thought about it long enough. Okay, we know who has to win. End of meeting. Let's go have a drink at the bar. Okay? And salute ourselves that we will continue to make money and continue to run this place. This is our place. Vegas is our place. I need that clip from that movie. I love Denzel Washington. I love his movies. I love Man on Fire, one of my favorites of all time. But how about Training Day?
oh, that's
I know
the
it's
best.
a crazy scene.
That's the
I
best.
know it's a crazy, but get it, Rob, get it for me, Chris. Our new man, Chris. We got to get that up. All right, I'm testing you already, Chris. We test people here. We test people. I want to get it up where he's in there. He's in the hood there, and with the other cop, the other actor, the other cop who he's trying to corrupt, and he has been corrupted.
Ethan
And
Hawke.
of course, yeah, and he's stolen money, and he's trying to get that bag of money, and Ethan Hawke won't give it to him, and he's looking at all the guys in the neighborhood, and he's trying to get them, all rough guys, and he's trying to get them, on his side, but they ain't going. Because they're rough guys, the guys that have been in trouble.
All right. So me getting no kind of
life, but
action. I got 5 minutes
still a
on my mic,
war in these
and I'm good to
that see-
go
I
just
know it sounds crazy, but you
let you
don't
hear
know.
nothing.
But there's a war in these guys, see, right? That just has a sense of no. There's a certain code that they had to abide, that they weren't going to get. Okay, and they weren't going to break for this guy. Not for this guy. Not for the way that this guy only cared about himself. No, they drew a line. Like I told them, they drew a line, and they said no. We ain't helping. We ain't helping. And he got so mad in that one scene because he was the guy that controlled everything. He controlled them. He threatened them with jail.
It's one mission.
Alright, so if you're not a PvP player, I'm not going to waste your time. Basically, your frame rate is going to be pretty good no matter what. It doesn't matter if you are playing on a Series X or Series S or PlayStation 5, and it doesn't matter if you are running the game in a performance or performance 30, you're gonna get pretty much the same result. I mean, even visually speaking, there is barely any difference whatsoever. So, also another thing, changing the resolution of your console is not going to help. It's not going to affect the performance in any way. If you think that by lowering the resolution of your game you're gonna get a better frame rate, you're wrong. The game is set to internally run at a very specific resolution, and you cannot change that. If I had to guess, I would say that performance and performance 30 on Series X and PS5, the game is running at 1440p, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. And of course, fidelity mode seems to be 4K. On Series S, however, I can guarantee you that the game is running at a much lower resolution in comparison to the Series X. There is a lot of blur on Series S. It's almost like the game is running at 900p. It looks pretty blurry. Of course, in fidelity mode, it's gonna look much better, but well, you're gonna get 30 FPS, so it fucking sucks. In fact, I don't recommend fidelity mode on Series S because the frame rate will actually drop below 30. So anyway, that was it. If you're not a PvP player, you can... Alright. If you are on a performance or doesn't matter what platform you're on. First reason, the resolution. As I said before, on Series X and the PS5, both games are being rendered at a very high resolution, something around 1440p. And this, of course, absolutely does not help when it comes to...
Here we go. See.
Second reason, and this is probably the biggest one, the new effects. With expanded on consoles, you are going to get new effects like the smoke, the fire, the explosions, all that shit. And unfortunately, this is going to destroy your frame rate, and there is nothing you can do about it. Now, we say this, the Series X seems to perform the best out of the three, and again, it doesn't matter.
क्या एफपीएस मैटर करता है? वेल द आंसर इज कॉम्प्लिकेटेड. हमें अभी टोटल 6 ऑप्शंस मिलते हैं और इनमें आप जितना ज़्यादा एफपीएस सेट करोगे उतना ज़्यादा सीपीयू एंड जीपीयू यूजेज बढ़ेगा, जिसके वजह से पावर कंजप्शन एंड टेम्परेचर भी बढ़ने लगेंगे. और आपके डिवाइस में जो प्रोसेसर है उसी के हिसाब से ही आपको सेटिंग्स मिलेंगे सेट करने के लिए. बेसिकली दो फैक्टर्स होते हैं फ्रेम को रेंडर करने के लिए. पहला होता है डिस्प्ले
अस्सलामुअलैकुम एवरीवन, होप यू ऑल डूइंग वेल. यार आज की जो वीडियो है वो कंपैरिजन वीडियो होगी 60 एफपीएस और 90 एफपीएस, और जो लोग 20 या इस मीडियम पे खेलते हैं या अल्ट्रा पे खेलते हैं उनके बारे में भी डिस्कस किया जाएगा.
Jesus
और पूरी
Louise.
डिटेल्ड वीडियो बताऊंगा. वीडियो सारी एंड तक देखना ताकि आप लोगों को समझ आ जाए, क्योंकि इसके अंदर जितने भी
جماعة لو انتبهتوا لحركاته هكر.
तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं।
Oh my goodness gracious.
रुको जरा, सब्र करो, बोलो धक्का मुक्की नहीं करो। Everybody know.
तो हे गाइस, दिस इज और गेमिंग ऑफिशियल और इस वीडियो में हम देखने जा रहे हैं 90 fps वर्सेस 60 fps का टेस्ट। क्योंकि मेरे पास दोनों फ़ोन है, दोनों को एक फ़ोन है ROG 3, एक फ़ोन है Realme Pro। एक में 90 fps सपोर्ट कर रहा है, 60 fps कर रहा है, तो आप बहुत इजीली जान सकेंगे कि 90 fps में अगर 1v1 कोई फाइट कर रहा है 60 fps वाले बंदे सो लेट्स
ओ भाई उसने अभी तक पीक ही नहीं किया, भाई उसने पीक ही नहीं किया इधर।
Okay, so hi guys, this is Gaming Roshan and आज की इस पर्टिकुलर वीडियो में अपन लोग बात करने वाले हैं 90
Oh,
fps
wow.
versus 60 fps
Wow.
versus 30 fps
I guess not special.
बहुत सारे लोग मैं जब ये वीडियो बनाऊंगा लिखेंगे here I barely play on 10 fps 15 fps 30 fps, तो उसकी बात कर लेंगे। एंड इस वीडियो के अंदर मैं आपको बताने वाला हूँ कि 90 fps कॉम्पिटिटिव में कितना ज़्यादा एक अच्छा इम्पैक्ट ला सकता है और क्या क्या चीज़ें खराब कर सकता है, उन सब चीज़ों के बारे में हम लोग बात करेंगे। तो शुरू करने से पहले अगर आप लोग नए चैनल को लाइक कर सकते हो,
I'm sorry, yeah.
तो अपने दोस्तों के साथ सब्सक्राइब कर सकते हो चैनल को। एंड मेरे सोशल्स के लिंक नीचे डिस्क्रिप्शन में मिल जाएंगे, वहां पे भी आप लोग आ सकते हो। और if you guys want to just connect me on Instagram 200 के करवा दो यार। if you guys just want to connect me on Twitter and Snapchat भी, तो खैर वहां पर भी आप लोग आ सकते हो। एंड अपन लोग वहां पर भी होपफुली डिस्कशंस को कंटिन्यू करेंगे। खैर सबसे पहली चीज आती है FPS, जो एक चीज रहती है इट्स फ्रेम्स पर सेकंड, राइट। आपको ह्यूमन आई को अच्छे तरीके से देखने के लिए भी कुछ लेजेंड फ्रेम्स पर सेकंड चाहिए होते हैं। उससे नीचे इमेज चॉपी होती है, उसके ऊपर से इमेज की स्मूथनेस निकल कर आती है। वी टॉक अबाउट दिस। सो नॉर्मली अगर मैं बोलूँ, नॉर्मली जिस तरीके से वीडियोस एंड ऑल शूट होती हैं, कुछ भी होता है, बेसिकली 24 FPS पर भी उनको रखा जाता है। लाइक इट्स लाइक दैट। एंड 29 to 30 FPS ऑब्वियसली हम लोग नॉर्मल जिस तरीके से हमने गेम्स खेलना शुरू किया वो भी वहां पर आता था। 60 fps is for the smoothest of the transitions, क्योंकि आप एक सेकंड में 60 फ्रेम्स डालते हो जो कॉन्स्टेंटली मूव कर रहे हैं। So 60 fps is obviously for a seamless transition, and then comes 90 fps, 120 fps. That's right.
कोई दिक्कत नहीं है सच। क्या यार नहीं पर है वो। कम ऑन भाई, क्या रिफ्लेक्सेस। भाई स्लाइड यार, मन कर रहा है मैं स्लाइड ऑन कर लूं। कैंपिंग और वॉट
1v2 करते हैं, चलो आईफोन वर्सेस एंड्रॉइड 1v2 मार दूंगा, एक बार मार दूंगा। अब तो आप 60 fps में खेल रहे हो, आप तो मैं मार दूं।
गाइस देखो, एनिमी का कॉन्फिडेंस देख के कहीं ना कहीं डर तो मुझे भी लग रहा है, लेकिन यार अब मुझे भी पता है कि मैं अभी अभी फोन में शिफ्ट
Oh my goodness gracious.
ओके गाइस, फाइनली आईफोन 13 प्रो मैक्स में BGMI में 90 fps आ चुका है। लिटरली बहुत सारे लोग खरीदने का सोच रहे हैं और मेरे पास तो है ऑलरेडी। तो
Fuck it.
You know, all of that. He was the guy, kind of like the people in Las Vegas, the commissioner, where they control everything, where they control. And he said, I'm the boss up in here. You're gonna go up against me? I'll put you all in Pelican Bay. I'll put you 24/7 shoe program. King Kong ain't got trap on me. I never forget that scene. He ain't got nothing on me. And they just looked at him like,
You're on your own.
ain't working. It ain't working.